So today I'm here to talk about Linux distributions and which is the quote unquote best distribution. And the answer to that is none of them. They all have issues, they all have flaws, but for some reason we like to call a specific one the best. And often that is just the user's preference. For example, I'd say Arch is the best. And I know my friend who's a Gentoo user will disagree with that and say Gentoo is the best, and a friend who uses Linux from scratch for whatever reason will say LFS is the best. Whoever you ask, it's going to be different. And that's because the real answer to the question, which Linux distro is the best, is the one that you make the best. Because every Linux distribution at the core is the same. Some GNU utilities with the Linux kernel. And then people add more programs onto it. For example, I have the Dwm Window Manager. And if I bring my cursor over here, you can see I've got a status bar, which is pretty, I don't know, there it is, which is pretty neat. And this could be done on any distribution. It's not specific to Arch. I had this set up on Gentoo at one point. I've even had it set up on Ubuntu. It doesn't matter which distribution that you actually use. So if you want to use Ubuntu, that's fine. If your workflow works in Ubuntu, cool. If it doesn't work in Ubuntu, that's also cool. I use Arch because it is minimal. I like it. I can install only the things that I need. And I could use Gentoo again, but I don't want to because I'm happy with this. I like Arch. And every distribution has its own sort of quirk, its own gimmick. Like Gentoo's is a source distribution, meaning instead of like this Arch where you just run a pacman command and it's done in like a couple of seconds, like if I want to install let's say XFCE for terminal, it will do it pretty quickly. That you saw how quick that done. Whereas on Gentoo you would have to compile all of those. So that is what a source-based distribution is. It's one where you compile all of the code. So for Xorg you compile that, for your kernel you compile that. Pretty much everything on the system you compile. Now there's also different types of release distributions. There's rolling release and static release. Static release is more like Ubuntu. They pretty much give you 2 ISOs a year. I believe it's one in April and one in October. So 2004 and 2110 are the current release ones, I think. And that's fine. You won't have the most up-to-date software because they're only updated every couple of months and twice a year. The distributions are, not the software. But with the rolling release distro, you can pretty much just go to the website, download the ISO. Even an ISO from like 10 years ago, I think, and it would still work perfectly. Because instead of it relying on newer packages. Okay, so editing me here, I'm going to stop this fuckwit and explain it a lot better. So, you can download an ISO of a minimal release distribution from like 10 years ago and install it the exact same way as you did then, and it would still get the most up to date. That's because on the servers, it only stores the most latest version, which is why if, for say, on Arch, you are installing a program and you will occasionally see a 404 error, like for a specific dependency, that's because that is no longer in the servers. And if it's not in the servers, it can't install it. That's typically just done with updating the cache that you have. So, yeah, I explained it a lot better here. Now, there are other distributions like Bedrock Linux, which is a weird distribution. So if you're unaware of what Bedrock Linux is, it basically just is everything at once. So, like it says, you could have Debian stable core utils, Arch's kernel, Void's run it system, a PDF reader with custom packages from Gentoo, front from the AUR, games running against Ubuntu, and software against CentOS. It's a really weird distribution. I've used it a couple of times. Pretty wacky, pretty cool. So, what I'm trying to say is, don't ask people what is the best distribution, because it's going to be a different answer for everyone you ask. Just pick a distribution that you want to use and use it for a while. And then, if you're using something like Manjaro, set up a VM and try and install Arch. Follow the install guide. Do it a couple of times, and you'll be more comfortable than if you're just doing it straight to hardware. Yo, what up? It's editing me again. Also, if you are going to use Linux, don't just throw your hands up in the air when a slight issue occurs. Just try and Google the issue if you have to. Do Google it, because chances are people have encountered that issue before and know how to fix it. And you're a lot better Googling it than just throwing your hands up in the air, declaring it's too hard and going back to Windows or Mac OS.